yeah, yeah, all those pieces do fit together. And that's the really cool thing about that is,
Fracture just divides it up.
yeah, there's no image or object replacement going on. It's like when it hits those cracks, they're actually in there all the time.
Actually, were you controlling the fracture point with anything using the geometry?
Oh yeah, that's actually a little feature I would like added into Fracture. Well, actually, I'll show you how I did that. Okay, so I got, this is a physically accurate asteroid. Okay, it's or rock or whatever. It's like it's all nicely tripled.
And this is full size, I would imagine.
What's that?
It's real world scale.
Close. Well, you know, asteroids come in all kinds of sizes, so yeah, it's one of them.
Which ones?
Okay, so the way I did the fracture on this, so I do random points, let's do like 2,000 of these. I scale these down to 0. And then I move that point to where I want the impact to happen. So right about there looks good. There we go. What's that? That's 2,000 points. So I get where I want, then I use jitter. So let's see, I got 10, 10, 10. And this gives me a nice little high density center for my points. And then it spreads out over that, and then I can.
That's actually a nice way of doing it.
Yeah, this is one thing I would like to see for like Fracture's built-in one, where it would have like an inverse fall off for the automatic points. So I can just expand that to what I want.
Because when I've been messing with it, I was using just the square points.
Yeah.
But it's not as controllable.
Yeah, and it's too even.
Yeah, it's not as.
Yes. So for this thing, I would actually have an impact here, and that's where I'm going to want all my small pieces. Then further away, everything is just going to be slowly cracked apart into larger chunks. So I've got that. I'm going to copy those points, keep them over there. So now I've got a backup of those. Go back to smooth shade. Go to multiply and fracture. For those who haven't played around with Fracture yet, you're getting a bonus demo here. First of all, you want to make sure your object's an enclosed object because it's doing a lot of Boolean work, and I mean a lot of Boolean work. And Booleans do not like little holes because then they don't know which way to do things. There's 3 methods you can use. Voronoi is the coolest one. Halves just basically keeps breaking the thing down into halves, and has hey, wait a minute, this is new. Background cutter for that? I haven't noticed that one before. Okay, but yeah, Fractal Cube will break this thing up in halves, but it does a lot of jagged stuff, which is really good for breaking things like concrete. It gives you that nice jagged edge. Cube is razor sharp. You probably use that for doing like glass. Matrix, it just cuts it into 8 slices on each axis. So, but you think you take a piece of bread and you cut it like all different directions, you get pretty cubic looking sections. Yeah.
They are jittered after they're generated. It's a matrix made of cubes.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, everything's pretty much evenly spaced, and then your jitter amount shakes it around, and yeah. Haven't found a lot of use for it yet, because everything looks still pretty regular. It's great for like background stuff if you need to break things down. Voronoi is a little bit trickier to explain but it basically looks at a whole bunch of points and figures out planes that go perpendicular to the intersections between those points. The crackle and the veins textures are basically Voronoi patterns. And Voronoi lets you use random points that it can generate itself, which in this case it would actually create 100 points internally that fit inside this volume, and then make objects around each one of those points. I'm going to use my background layer points that I created. So now, you know, the cell count's gone because now it's using how many points I've got in the actual background. And once I do that, I just say OK. Now it's jumped to a new layer. So it's keeping my original geometry, but it's going to create new geometry in this layer. And we just wait a little while for this. It's doing a bunch of things. One of the things it's doing is actually creating all the internal blocks around all those points. And then it's also got to figure out where they intersect the outside surface. I'm going to use fewer points. This is taking a while. That's better. Yeah, I just reduced the number of points that were outside the asteroid, so it's going a little faster now. Well, no, it prefers to have the points inside the object, because those are the only ones that make sense to it. But what I had is a whole bunch of points on the outside, which I find actually makes the surface break up a little better.
So what is it using those points for? That you made
Figure out where the pieces are going to go.
The center.
It'll have a piece around each point. Think of like each point as the center of a bubble in foam. And that's basically what it's doing. It's like, you know how you get like a bunch of bubbles together, they all have flat edges against one another? Well, that's basically what it's doing.
What does it do with those points that were outside of the object?
It was basically ignoring them, but it still uses them to figure out where the other pieces are. You know, like if you have a point inside the object and a point out here, it's going to put an edge between them. So I'll have like a little piece that'll be on the surface that wouldn't normally be there. And I find it actually makes the breakup look a little bit nicer if I have a few of those guys outside.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, having all those guys out there was actually just adding a lot of time, because it's like, well, 3/4 of the points were actually outside the object, and I'm using 1/4 that's in. And, oh, I forgot to run the little morph. So, yeah, every once in a while you'll get these little horns where it's just something that didn't, you know, Boolean correctly, and it's, you know, again, precision errors. But, yeah, when you do fracture, there's an explode parts thing where it actually, you know, it makes a morph map where all the pieces are exploded. Haven't found a real use for that other than just previewing how the thing looks, but you know, I forgot to run it on here. Luckily, there's the explode parts plugin where I can say 550, and it does the same thing. So there's the interior surface.
You see the little explode function that shows you the pieces when you run the routine? That was one of the first things that I have to even put in, because you want to see what it does. And the cool thing about it is it automatically adds an endomorph on your object, so that if you want to do the old school way of blowing things up, you can do that. You know, because sometimes when we were doing the kids shows, you know, back at Netter and all the stuff with you know, the things we did there, and also the Starship Troopers, when they would blow up a creature or whatever, they just sometimes just use a morph target with a lens flare. You know, you blow the thing up, and so you can do that quick and easy, cheap way. It's built in and done for you automatically, and then it also creates your, you know, shows you what your routine has done for you without having to figure out. If you just did the division without showing you, you have to go into layout and perform something on it to see what it did. So it's all about the workflow.
But as I said, if you forgot to do this, you don't have to undo and redo it. There's an explode parts plugin which does the same thing. So you go back here.
Create some more?
Yeah. So if I go back to my base, and it's like, oh, I forgot to do the explode parts. Well, I'll do, let's say, 10. And now it's exploded. So with the same object, I now have two. Well, I just redid the exploded morph. It overwrote the old one.
You know, for some shots close up, you could just go in there and not even use dynamics and just use the morph target to make it, things start breaking apart. It would work really good for some stuff.
But yeah, I remember doing this stuff by hand years ago, like LightWave 3. I was breaking a bell for a sprint ad, and that was my day. I'm just like doing booleans. Just take a crumpled ball. Had two copies of the object, and I cut a boolean out for one chunk. Then I have to remove the same boolean for the other bell to remove the chunk from the other piece, then move those pieces over and keep stepping through the thing one piece at a time. And it took a day. This just took a few minutes.
Anybody see that movie in the '90s that was on TV called Meteorites? It was a network special. It was about asteroids hitting the Earth. I did that. And it took all day to do these kind of like what you could push this button and break it up with, and it took all day to do that.
So Dave, something like this for so many chunks coming up, how are you texturing it so that all the parts are textured too? How are you?
Oh, it's just the same texture on everything, except like for the interior stuff, I don't have my craters aspect of the texture. So it's just bare rock, but the craters are actually using IFW textures with a waveform. It's basically the same texture as the crust texture you've got, which just puts random dots. But IFW has one called scatter, which gives you a little more control. And they also have a waveform called spline, where you can actually draw what your waveform looks like. So I actually draw like the cross section of a crater and apply that to the bumps. And now I have craters all over different sizes. And I added like 4 times, so I get a good variation in sizes of the crater. So I got a few large ones, and then as they get smaller, they're more numerous. And that's just scattered all over the outside of the surface.
So you just group select all the parts and set a procedural, pretty much, then only worry about the surface.
Yeah, so it was just one layered object. They all have the same surface, and they're just all different sizes. But once you break it up, it creates an interior surface, and I just copied the surface over and deleted the crater parts.
So when you run the routine, it automatically generates a different surface name on the interior pieces.
Yeah, so with
so that we did that for like concrete and things like that, where you want to have a little bit of a difference maybe in the finish of the outside of the building, or an apple falling apart or whatever it is. You can kind of play with that, but if you don't need to, you just copy one surface to the other, and for those inside pieces, even a cubic map sometimes, or those kinds of things, those old school kind of ways, is just creating rubble. Or something like that. The interior of a building, you want something to look like there's scaffolding or glass or something in there, and find some texture that works for that. It'd be different than the texture on the outside of the building. And just having that difference between those two, with the explosions and the fire and the flame and all working with it.
Yeah, here's an example of it on just a cube. I give it a morph of 10, 50. So here's the halves method, which is really good for doing concrete. Actually, I just do the cube first. This would be pretty quick. And see, those are razor straight edges. That would be handy for breaking a window. Go back to the cube again. Fracture. This time I'm going to use the fractal cube. Just the default settings again. And now that would look more like concrete breaking. Yeah, so just going through and breaking this cube for various methods here. So this is the random points where the fracture tool itself actually creates those points instead of me doing it in a separate layer. So this is the same cube, just broken down in multiple different pieces. There's 10 pieces, or it's supposed to be 10. That's 100, and that's supposed to be 500. Again, they all fit together. That was the fractal cubes method for halves, which gives nice concrete. This is the matrix, the default settings. Yeah, you can see from the side, it looks pretty regular, but you can jitter things around a little bit. go back to the matrix, try 575. Make it a little bit faster.
So it just jitters the matrix that was using? Did you randomize it?
Yeah. But you can see it's like it's creating a little bit of some edges on the sides. Go texture wire.
Does this work the same with standard geometry and subdivision surfaces, or does it not work to subdivision?
Subdivision should be frozen first.
Frozen.
Yeah, just nothing really works for cutting up subdivision surfaces because it changes how the edges are defined. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah,
That's great.
I would like to see the Voronoi fracture using the background geometry. 'Cause we
The which?
the background geometry.
Oh, right, yeah, I forgot about that one,
that's
sorry.
cool.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about that mode.
You can use some balls.
Let's see, I'll do a ball. So, yeah, let's just stick it right in the middle.
It's faster, but defined.
So, yeah, in this case, instead of using points that I've defined in another layer, I'm going to use, where is it, multiply, fracture. What? Oh, I was on a morph, wasn't I? Yeah, make sure you don't have morphs selected when you do a fracture because you get some really interesting results. Okay. The fracture, I think it's actually been fixed that it actually turns the morphs off, doesn't it? Okay. So Voronoi, background polygons. It's not really, working with the polygons. These polygons are defining a volume for the random points it's going to create. So we'll just do this.
So the point of impact is fractured smaller than from that point.
And you can use more than one
It's
background.
like pane of glass or something that's really useful for that. The windshield of a car where the head is in.
Like multiple spheres in the background layer.
Yeah. Now what would be nice is if it did a nice little fall off, because right now it's got all the points all evenly spaced inside the sphere. But I want something where the spacing gets larger the further away from the center you get, which gives a more natural feel. So if I take that same cube and use the points here, multiply, fracture, background points, speed that up a bit, get rid of the points I'm not using.
And you have to survey all the UV. It's important to keep your not math using these. You want to keep them, right? So what's newly created interior surface? Okay, there's no problem there. But your object, your LCD.
There goes one. So you need a little more variation in the sizes that way. So that's using the geometry. You got small pieces and large pieces instantly. And with the points, you get a little more control over the size. Of course, I got a lot of weird stretchy ones over there because I got it from a corner. Using two objects, background. And we got a double impact on here. So yeah, up until LightWave 11, this would have been a couple days of work just doing, you know, these little demonstrations.